My 2 cents, where we break down misinformation that's posted online. I'm your host, Bori Morales.
The true history of the Democratic Party as told through AI.
Really? Man, I can't wait to hear this shit.
What up, America? It's Andrew Jackson, that guy you roll up to hit some powder.
Thank God you showed up. I was running low on powder from my pipe.
I founded the Democrat Party.
Yeah, that's true. He actually did start the Democratic Party. This one is not false.
And chose the jackass as our mascot. Now, as you can probably tell, times have changed a bit from the party back in my day.
Yeah, really changed. It's been 200 years.
And present-day Democrats will come to hate me, but that's your problem. Jackson started the Democrat Party to appeal to the common man.
Now, when they say the common man, this is the common man. Not this or this. And definitely not this.
Democrats today sometimes give him credit for that, but only after calling him an evil white bigot.
Look how happy and a smug face this content creator has. Like he hit a three-pointer from half court. Yeah, some Democrats could have criticized him for that, calling him a white bigot or racist. But, again, and why would people say that? I don't know. Maybe because he owned slaves and he displaced Native Americans?
Needless to say, the party started off pretty sketchy by today's standards. We were by far the pro-slavery party all the way through the Civil War.
Okay, just to add context, listen, both major parties back then had leaders who owned slaves. Both parties change over time. Nothing stays the same. People, society, even technology changes. A phone from 200 years ago isn't the same as today. And politics isn't either. How he's comparing something that happened 200 years ago to something now is insanely comical. You know how hard is it to send a text 200 years ago? You had to get a horse and a guy, and it took 3 days to get there. So when he says that the Democratic Party started off a little sketchy, that they were the pro-slavery party up to the Civil War. Here's this. That's not entirely wrong, but it's missing a big part of the story. You can't talk about the time period without talking about the North and the South. Back then, the country wasn't split by today's political parties, the way people think. It was split by regions. There was the South, largely supported slavery. The North largely opposed it. And guess what? Most of the Democrats were where? In the South. Most of the Republicans were in the North. So yeah, if you say Democrats supported slavery back then, you're really talking about Southern Democrats. Because over time, those regions' alignment change completely. So when people talk about 1800 politics and try to map it directly on today's party, that's where it gets misleading. That's not the full story, that's just part of it.
After the war, we cleaned up our act and supported the North's reconstruction efforts. Totally kidding, we doubled down on racism and became the party of the Klan.
Was there racism and resistance to Reconstruction in the South? Yes. Because after the Civil War, Reconstruction was trying to expand rights for formerly enslaved people. And a lot of white Southerners didn't want that change. Was there overlapping with Southern Democrats at the time? Also, yes. Because in that region, many of those people opposing those changes were aligned with the Democratic Party. But saying that the Democratic Party became party of the Klan, that's oversimplifying history. You're taking a specific time, a specific region, and a specific group and trying to turn it into one blanket statement. And history doesn't work like that.
But seriously, we didn't have much of a platform after the war, except Jim Crow, but that was until our boy came in hot on his rollerblades. Then came the Depression. People lost trust in markets, so I wheeled in to drastically expand communism across the country. And Democrats been hooked ever since.
Let's dissect this. And this is what I was talking about earlier. You're taking facts and then you're twisting and turning them like a purple nurple.
Oh my God.
Let's talk about FDR's New Deal. Because they were calling it communism. and it's not. The New Deal came because of the Great Depression. There wouldn't be no New Deal if there was no Great Depression. And in this Great Depression, people were suffering, people were losing their jobs, people were losing their homes, some were literally starving. These were Americans. This was happening in America. So what was the president supposed to do? Just say, hey, you know what? You'll be fine. No, he didn't. He stepped up. He created the New Deal. Now, what was that? It created jobs. It stabilized banks. It helped people survive. That's what government is supposed to do when it's at its worst moment. If you've been paying taxes your whole life and the country hits a crisis, you don't think the government should step in and help? Like, come on. Come on. You help fund it. Roads, system, infrastructure. That's your money at work. Now, yes, this expanded the role of government. That part is true. But calling it communism? Come on, man. That's false. At that time, the U.S. was still a capitalist country. Private businesses still existed. Markets still operated. That's not communism. That's intervention during a crisis. That's a huge difference. And this whole thing, or this whole idea that this video is saying, Democrats have been hooked on it ever since. Like it's some kind of addiction. Democrats generally support government programs. That is true. But guess what? So do Republicans. Depending on the situation, of course. That's called policy differences, not communism. And as far as for Jim Crow, yes, those laws existed, but mainly in the South. But acting like that was an entire, political platform, that's not the full story either. So what actually happened? FDR expanded government programs during a crisis. Because that's what presidents are supposed to do. Not sit back and hope everything fixes itself. That's not communism. That's leadership.
Up until this point, blacks had always voted Republican as they were the party that freed the slaves. But after FDR's New Deal, blacks swung 75% Democrat. This was a complete realignment, not because of civil rights, but because of economics. All while the Democrats were still the party of the Klan, and their stronghold was the South.
We pushed segregation throughout the South and filibustered the 1964 Civil Rights Act for 75 days. It wasn't until Republicans stepped up and found even more votes to pass the bill. So ask yourself, how are Democrats seen as the party of the civil rights?
Well, it's getting more interesting because they're mixing the truth and trying to make a milkshake without the milk. That's what the context is. It's what holds everything together. Because nobody wants to eat a milkshake with a fork. So, let's go over the facts. Yes, black voters originally supported Republicans. That is a fact because of Abe Lincoln. Freeing the slave, that's a pretty big deal. But this video tries to make it sound like it was just about money. That black voters were, gold diggers. It was about civil rights. And you can't put a price on freedom. Let me put it to you like this. If you were locked in a cell with Bubba, you're 160 pounds. Bubba is 6'10", 450 pounds. You're taking a paycheck or you're taking your freedom? Exactly. Now, black Americans got the right to vote through the 15th Amendment in 1870. That was pushed by Republicans after the Civil War. That's a fact. But then what happened? Those rights were suppressed. Even though black Americans were legally given the right to vote in 1870, many states, especially the South, still blocked that right in practice. Now, they used things like poll taxes, which many people couldn't afford, and literacy tests, which were often unfair and designed to exclude voters. There were also many intimidations and violence going on. So while they had the right and it existed on paper, it wasn't truly accessible for many people. Now, fast forward to 1948. President Harry Truman, a Democrat, desegregated the military. 1964. President Lyndon B. Johnson, also Democrat, signed the Civil Rights Act. 1965, same president, signed the Voting Rights Act. And here's the hot potato nobody wants to touch. Those laws were passed with support from both parties, Democrats and Republicans. Interesting, huh? Yeah, I know. Funny how that part didn't make the video. Interesting how that works.
Well, it's because
Democrats are very persuasive. But again, it ultimately boils down to economic incentives. Once Democrats realize the power of government spending and handouts, you can appeal to any voter group and lock them in.
1, 2, 3.
Gays for Palestine.
Good luck with that.
So anyway, to sum it all up, my party has changed a shit ton, but it's not because of the mythical party switch. Democrats controlled the South all the way through the 1990s. But they did adopt new policies like massive social spending and welfare programs that allowed them to appeal to more diverse voting groups.
Got him. Ladies and gentlemen, find the line.
Got him. What did you get specifically? Like, you've been telling half-truths and false claims through the whole video. Okay, so I guess we're just going to ignore that both parties love spending money when it helps them win vote. That's not a democratic thing. That's a political thing. Now, the rest of this argument in this video is kind of half-truth mixed with a lot of skipping history. So let's start one by one. Democrats figured out government spending. You know, not really. Both parties has always used spending. Republicans have backed huge military budgets, tax cuts, and stimulus. Spending isn't new or one-sided. The other claim, Democrats controlled the South until the 1990s. Okay, that's outdated. They dominated the South early on, but after the Civil Rights era, 1960s, Southern voters, they gradually shifted Republican. By the 80s and the 90s, that shift was already well on the way. Okay, the other thing, no party switch happened. This wasn't something like flipping a switch, and it happened overnight. There was a realignment, but the voters' base changed over time. Ignoring that is like watching the Super Bowl, and when the halftime, finishes, it's like the score never happened. Welfare programs were, to attract diverse voters. Okay, you know what? That's oversimplifying it. These programs were created as an economical policy, like Social Security, like Medicare. And those benefits were for all kind of people. Whether you were living in a trailer park, whether you're elderly, working class, not just one group. So yeah, there are pieces of truth in this video, but the full picture, is a little bit more complicated than one party spending and controlling everything. Again, this is more like a TikTok version than real history. You're just editing little parts out. Now, the person that sent me over this video also sent me this message. You just watch a factual video. Even now, the Democratic Party wants immigrants for cheap labor. They're new slaves. I'm quoting them. Who's going to clean your toilets? Who's going to pick up your crops? They want them as their new slaves. And they are so worried about giving them citizenship so they can vote for them. Cubans won't vote Democratic. Venezuelans won't vote Democratic. I mean the majority of them. So let me break this down one by one. And when I'm doing this, it's not to insult the person, and these videos are never to insult any party or insult any person. It's just to educate people on the misinformation that's out there. So let's go one by one. Democrats want immigrants as their new slave. This is not factual. This is an opinion, an accusation. This is not supported by evidence. No official policy or platform from the Democratic Party said anything like this. Okay, this is just Facebook banter. Who's going to clean your toilets and pick your crops? Okay, this is partially true, but misused. You know, variations of this, I've seen it, has been said by individual politicians or commentators. And this is usually in the context of discussing labor shortage or economic roles that immigrants fill. It's not a party-wide position. You know, this is being taken out of context and generalized. Okay, next one. Immigrants, documented and undocumented, they do work in lower wage sectors. Now, economists debate back and forth about this. This is not a single party plan. So there's no evidence of coordinated plan to use immigrants as slaves. That's that's not factual. That's just this person saying that or people saying that. That's not real facts. They want citizenship so they can vote for them. Okay, listen. No politician is going to give you citizenship for you to vote for them. This takes, and I'm not sure if you know this takes a long time. Years, legal proceedings. That politician may not even be in office by the time you become a citizen. So that's ridiculous. And it's also probably a claim that you heard online, but this is not really happening. Okay, Cuban Venezuelans don't vote Democratic. Okay, you know what? That's a little bit true there, but not absolutely true. You know, some groups like Cuban Americans, their voting patterns are by generations and locations. So the ones that voted in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2000s, it may vary. So when you're watching these videos online, whether you get it from Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, or any other platform, you have to make sure that you take into consideration that people in these videos are always leaning towards one party or another. So fact checking is important. There's a big difference between two words here that people use in these videos. Opinion and fact. You are always going to be 100% right when you take a test of your opinion, because it's your opinion. That's how you think. You are entitled 100% for your opinion. That is your opinion. That is your right as an American. But facts are backed up with data. You can't take something that's a truth and then twist it and turn it and leave out some facts and then call it the true history of the Democratic Party. And just twist it and turn it the way you want just to push your agenda. Now, videos like this, like if you really, really hate Republicans, if you really hate Democrats, you're not even going to bother to do research. You're like, yep, that's true. I'm not going to bother to research it, or I don't want to research it because it's true. But, and the same thing goes with Democrats. If you find a video of Republicans and you're like, yeah, I hate them too, no problem. Always do your research, whether you're on this side, left or right, whatever side you are, do your research. It helps. Not all Democrats are bad. Not all Republicans are bad. Not all Democrats are stupid. Not all Republicans are stupid. But you have to you have to distinguish between fact and opinion. Those are the main things. And all this stuff, we live in an era where you could do research just by picking up your phone. Google search, ChatGPT. There are people out there that do research that are not for both parties. They're just equal. Do your research. I'm not going to tell you where to look at. You can look for yourself and find a neutral party that will tell you the truth about what Democrats say, what Republicans say, what third party says. Just do the research yourself. And have a great day. And that is my 2 cents.